stand here and be insulted.
Leonard Nimoy actually began his extraterrestrial career in the 1950s.
Perhaps a little longer. The atmosphere on Mars is so thin we've adapted ourselves to live on very little oxygen.
My first work as an alien was, I believe, 1951, over 40 years ago, in what was known as a Saturday serial. It was in a piece called Zombies of the Stratosphere, in which I played one of 3 or 4 Martians who arrived on Earth in a wobbly silver cigar-shaped spaceship that landed behind a rock, because then they didn't have to show the whole ship. And we got off of this ship carrying weapons that looked to me like 38 caliber revolvers. And we hijacked a pickup truck, and we were going to take over planet Earth.
As both actor and director, Leonard Nimoy has done a lot to popularize the idea of space exploration. He also has some thoughts about the psychological roots of this alien thing.
There was a movie in which I had a very small role in, I think, the early 50s, called Them, also about alien creatures. In this case, they were mutations. They were ants that had mutated into these giant creatures. But I thought the title was perfectly appropriate to cover this entire canvas. Them. It's us, and there's them. And them is the other. It's people of different color, people of different attitude, people of different social structure, people with different values than we have.
Some say we have a deep-seated need for aliens. After all, what's an us without a them? But Wells saw his Martians in starker terms, since perhaps man's fate, if man is not very smart, or lucky, or both. As the hero continues his journey, he sees that the Martians have shifted from the use of heat rays to a form of poison gas, which at least preserves the architecture. And something is happening to the red weed. It seems to be dying, probably from a mold or some other plant pest. Now, as he makes his way deeper into the city of London,
it was as if that mighty desert of houses had found a voice for its fear and solitude. I turned northwards, marveling toward the iron gates of Hyde Park. I had half a mind to break into the Natural History Museum and make my way up to the summits of the towers in order to see across the park, but I decided to keep to the ground.
he comes upon Regent's Park, and there it is.
I was not terrified. I came upon him as if it were a matter of course. I watched him for some time, but he did not move.
A second monster lies by the zoological gardens. The hero continues walking, with some purpose now, past the park.
While that voice sounded, the solitude, the desolation had been endurable. By virtue of it, London had still seemed alive, and the sense of life about me had upheld me. Then suddenly it changed. The passing of something, I knew not what, and then a stillness that could be felt. Nothing but this gaunt quiet.
Moving on, he finally sees the curve of Primrose Hill, and on its crest, a third Martian.
The Martians were dead, slain by the putrefactive and diseased bacteria against which their systems were unprepared, slain as the red weed was being slain, slain after all man's devices had failed.
Well, it's not the Earthlings who defeat the Martians. It's the minute and almost invisible bacteria. What a coup d'etat! Who wrote such a marvellous ending to a novel as that? It's wonderful, isn't it?
Millions of readers have agreed. But there is more to this book than a wonderful story. Behind it was Wells's continuing fear that humankind would annihilate itself before it learned how to preserve itself. A subject about which he had uncanny foresight. In 1934, a young physicist named Leo Szilard was contemplating the idea of atomic chain reaction. Knowing what this would mean, Szilard said years later, and I knew because I had read H.G. Wells, I did not want this patent to become public. In 1913, Wells already had imagined just such a chain reaction, an atomic bomb. And 32 years later, that frightful prediction came true, obliterating the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The writer died a few months later. The character of H.G. Wells is the subject of continuing debate, but his importance as a writer and a thinker is not. The New York Times called him the greatest public teacher of his time, and the durability of his stature is conceded even by his bitterest critic today.
Don't be put off because he was a bad man and he wrote things that can be very damaging. He was also one of the finest writers of the century. The War of the Worlds is a book of consummate standing. Wells was without any doubt a great writer. I think he will be seen as one of the greats. I'd say one of the 20 greats in the English language.
The struggle between good and evil in mankind. Glorious future versus none at all. Such are the elements that do battle in a little book published almost a century ago by an enigmatic, contradictory man at war with himself, but a man whose vision embraced the future of the human race.
And when the slow cooling of the sun makes this earth uninhabitable, as at last it must do, it may be that the thread of life that has begun here will have streamed out and caught our sister planet in its toils. Dim and wonderful is the vision I have conjured up in my mind of life spreading slowly from this little seedbed of the solar system throughout the inanimate vastness of sidereal space. But that is a remote dream. It may be, on the other hand, that the destruction of the Martians is only a reprieve. To them, and not to us perhaps, is the future ordained.